The Dallas Cowboys had practice on Wednesday. What's the biggest takeaway from OTAs? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, your biggest takeaway from OTAs on Wednesday was?
Cowboys are winning the Super Bowl. I mean, it's unstoppable hype season
for you to get there.
That's right. All it takes is one practice, and the Cowboys are back in it as contenders. I think for me, it's the first practice is always how much it's an exercise in catching. It's an exercise in self-control. It's an exercise in catching yourself, being like, all right, did you apply the appropriate amount of grain of salt to that comment before consuming it? Because, OTAs, it's a small sample size, it's a small bit of information, and it's the very, very beginning. So there's definitely ways to react, overreact, and underreact to all of this. So we just are trying to kind of take what we've learned from the past and figure out what's important and kind of deliver it to y'all.
My biggest takeaway is that CeeDee Lamb literally got bigger, like stronger and taller. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. He said he grew a half inch over the offseason. He gained 10 pounds of muscle, which, hey, awesome for him. I don't necessarily believe it, but I do think he definitely put on some more muscle. Like, you can just see that in the pictures. But, he's firmly established himself as wide receiver one. He was the only receiver really practicing yesterday outside of him and Simi Fehoko. But yeah, this is CeeDee Lamb's time to shine, and it seems like we're hearing all the right things so far, from putting on muscle in the offseason, literally getting taller, being moved to Dak right next to Dak Prescott in the locker room. Stock way up for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've heard of it's not outside the realm of possibility that he grew a half inch. I'm pretty sure my dad used to tell me stories about how he grew a half inch at 21 years old or 20 years old. So it does happen. I don't know if it did happen with CeeDee or not, but great. I'll take that another half inch and 10 pounds. It is kind of ironic that he gained 10 pounds and then got a half inch taller. So meaning that, like, he probably is still as stretched out as he was before. It's just a little bit more, So, but yeah, I mean, look, I will say this: like, you can see a physical difference in CeeDee Lamb just by the pictures. Yeah. Like, he looks more filled out. His legs and his arms just seemed, more less stringy, more muscular. So there's more definition there. So I definitely see that part, and I think and that was one of the things I will say. If you're asking me a takeaway, I feel like we hadn't heard anything about CeeDee this offseason. Just nothing. Like, good or bad, or where he's working out, or what he's working on.
I kind of just think that's his personality too.
Sure,
like,
absolutely.
We just don't hear about him a lot unless he's playing, right?
And so I think kind of getting all that information was a lot, because he's one of the guys who's obviously most important to this team, that it feels like we've had the least amount of information about what's going on with him in the offseason.
Honest, I mean, we're joking a little bit, but the most important takeaway that we had from OTAs was Dak, right? Dak being healthy. Yep. I got a quote here from Dak. He said, "This is the healthiest I've been in a long, long time." He said his body's feeling absolutely great. And then you actually sent me this about talking about the 10-yard splits. He said, "We're testing our 10-yard splits the other day. And mine might not be where I want it to be, but I can tell you it was much better than it was last year." We actually talked a little bit about this on yesterday's show. I said one of the ways that Dak can really improve is if he gets back to being at least a threat to as a runner. He doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but just be a threat. And if we can see him doing that more frequently this year and being a little bit more explosive, then the Cowboys offense will be better. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that Dak is there, he's throwing, and he's healthy.
I think that was half of my biggest takeaway. The other half of that same biggest takeaway from Dak's quotes was, they talked about what he worked on in the offseason. He talked about consistency. But the thing that really, really stuck out to me is that he's been working on his footwork. That specifically is what we talked about all of last season. When Dak has problems, it's just when his footwork is inconsistent. So having him really kind of focus on getting more consistency in his footwork, I think that's huge. Going back to the 10-yard split thing that you mentioned, for me, Dak has never been, you mentioned Lamar Jackson. Dak has never been a long speed guy. That's never been part of his game. But what made him dangerous is that he's big, he's strong, and he did have like a good initial burst, so that when he saw it and he took off, he could get some yardage going before someone caught up to him, and even then he could deal some blows. He could take some guys with him. He could carry a guy too as he powers through to get an extra yard or so. When you saw it last year, it just looked like he didn't have that same burst to kind of take off the way he wanted to. So I'm glad to see that some time away from the injury, some time away from the rehab has gotten him kind of closer to what we were used to. And I think that explains a lot of why he didn't do a lot of that last year, is that he just wasn't good at it anymore at that point. He needed to kind of regain that explosion in his calves specifically in order to kind of push off immediately to get moving forward north and south to kind of get extra yards. So I think both of those reports are not unexpected, but certainly welcome to hear from Dak.
Yeah. Some other takeaways. Wide receivers. We know Jalen Tolbert, no James Washington, although Mike McCarthy didn't seem too concerned. Heard some whispers that James Washington has tendonitis. That's all. Nothing big. They're just being it's a precaution, right, to have the walking boot on. Jalen Tolbert, I don't know if anybody mentioned what the injury was, but Mike McCarthy did say that they expect him to be back either next week or for mandatory minicamp. But I already saw people freaking out on Twitter. Like, the season's already over. The Cowboys have no receivers. They need to go out and make a trade. It's May 25th, guys. 26th. It's not that big.
And maybe that should be the biggest takeaway, is that it's May 25th, so this information is somewhat helpful, but it's certainly we're not having I don't know that anything you found out is having any effect on any games anytime soon. So let's keep that in mind.
I'm just not worried about Jalen Tolbert not practicing in one OTA practice that the media got to see. It's just,
and he was on the cords too, so it was probably some soft tissue kind of just precautionary thing. So
I do want to talk about another injury though that really, really had people up in arms and panicking yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
But before we get to that, let's tell you guys about Built Bar. We've got a new Built Bar to tell you guys about. We've got granola Built Bars. They come out in 3 unbelievable flavors, including chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. If you want to try all 3 flavors, go get a mixed box right now at built.com. Only 150 calories, 15 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. Built granola bars are absolutely going to rock your world. So go to built.com right now and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And go try out some of their other fantastic Built Bars they have. They've got the Built Puffs, double chocolate brownie. They're bringing back some more coconut stuff. So go to built.com and see what they have in stock. All right, let's talk about Tyron Smith. Did not practice on Wednesday, and people are losing their minds, Landon. He had a tight lower back. He was at practice, and Mike McCarthy said, why risk it? Should we be concerned about Tyron Smith's back here in May?
I mean, no more or no less than you are generally concerned about Tyron Smith's back. I think at this point in the OTAs practices, in mini camp, whatever it is, anything, your shoelace broke, your one of your cleats got dirt on it. Any reason to get these guys to sit out, they're probably going to do. A, because Tyron Smith doesn't need OTA practices, and B, because let's go sure as heck does need these OTA practices. Yeah, a little shot there. I think that look, these guys, especially these older vets, it's more about getting reps for these younger guys, and that is where I will say it is it's not like the end of the world, but it would be better if Tolbert was out there, right? Because all these young guys need all these reps, every single one. And for Tyron, it's like he had the neck surgery, it's helped his back. That doesn't mean he's never going to ever experience tightness in his back. He plays left tackle in the NFL. So any excuse to kind of get him out of practice to let these other guys kind of take their shots and get reps in there, they're gonna avail themselves of it. I'm just not worried about this right now, and I don't know that I'm worried about anybody. I'm not worried about any injury that is being referred to as we decided to hold him out of an OTA. OTA 1. It's just hard to get upset about it.
Now, I don't want to compare myself to Tyron Smith, but as someone who is basically the same exact age, listen, bad backs don't really get better. They're always a little sore. Now, you can manage the pain a little bit. So if a game isn't on the line here, there's really no reason to send him out there.
I'm so glad we have you here to kind of give us the athlete side of exactly what's happening to your body at that age. You and Tyron Smith are almost clones. I mean, it's just like it's like you guys are twins. It's unbelievable.
All right, let's talk about the actual important news. Matt, well, let's go.
Yeah.
Started at left tackle yesterday. There was some conflicting reports about, was it Josh Ball? Was it Let's Go? Kind of heard that it was Valetzko that was playing left tackle. Josh Ball did rotate in, but he was more the primary backup behind Terrence Steele. Is that surprising to you at all?
No, because again, I think that they're just trying to get these guys as many reps as they can. I mean, I think if they are seriously going for it, where they're going to try to have these guys, well, Let's Go and Ball be the backups for the tackles on that side, then both of these guys need every single snap that they can take. They need to see every single snap against every single NFL defensive end they can get their hands on, simply to kind of get a feel for what it is, for what the speed is, to kind of get caught up to speed. I mean, Let's Go is coming from a spot in North Dakota where it's like, I mean, the most difficult competition he's faced is very few and far between, and it's usually something like North Dakota State, which again is a reputable school for that level, but is still not Division
I mean, his biggest test was the Senior Bowl. Like when he went to the Senior Bowl, that was the first time he played NFL competition ever in his career.
Yeah. So again, for the Cowboys, all of this is about getting young guys reps. It's not anything else. I mean, they're not doing real install here. They're not doing anything like that. It's more just about getting them. I mean, really early on in OTAs, it's about learning how to practice, learning how to get through the different pods and learning about what's important. It's a very base install thing. So they are going to do whatever they can to get these guys as many snaps as they can. That's why you see someone like Let's Go as LT1, because why do you need Tyron to go through this for the 10th time in his career in OTA 1s? He knows what these practices are. Well, Let's Go has no idea. So let's get him as many of these practice reps as we can.
A couple other notes on offense before we move on. Ryan Nall, I kind of feel like this is your guy now. Ryan Nall, your guy, got a lot of reps as a single back, basically the running back with the third team. Tyler Smith didn't start at left guard. Connor McGovern did. That's not all that surprising. Connor McGovern's still a young player too, so they're trying to get both those guys reps. But that's basically it. I would say that Kyle Yeomans from DallasCowboys.com did said he thought Smith and Let's Go looked really good when they were on the field. So that's encouraging to hear. Any more thoughts on the offense before we move on?
No, not. I mean, I think we should talk about the fact that maybe they came out in some 20 personnel, and I think again they did this exactly this time last year as well, when they were also dealing with wide receivers, kind of dealing with some injuries. So we've heard whispers that they are planning on trying to use Pollard a little bit more in the receiving game. We'll see. This obviously kind of helps that conversation, but at the same time, I'm cautioning again a very heavy grain of salt, because just like last year when they were short wide receivers, they ran a lot of 20 personnel to kind of get Pollard that work in that way. So it is encouraging towards the Pollard being getting more snaps idea, but it certainly is nothing definitive, and I would wait to hold off celebrating until training camp.
All right, one more note on the offense before we move on. I got to go back to Dak real quick because I did talk to somebody who was there and knows what they're watching. Again, that's very important when you go to these practices. Not everybody who's credentialed knows what they talk about
Yep.
or what they're seeing. They said Dak's arm looked significantly better than it did at any point last year. And again, that's not really surprising considering, I mean, he had a shoulder injury in training camp, right? And a lot of your zip and throwing power comes from your lower body, which he was
Yes.
rehabbing a lot last year, right? So they just thought he had a lot of zip on his passes, which it's great to hear. It's not all that surprising though either.
I think footwork. Let's just talk about footwork again, because I think, a lot of times when we've seen Dak short arm things or unable to get it where it needs to be, it's because his upper body and his lower body are disconnected, and he's trying to just wing it with his arm or his upper body torque, and he's not resetting his feet. And I think a lot of that has to do with his feet not being as quick as he needed them to be. He because when you throw the football, you adjust your feet in the pocket. You need to readjust your feet to plant them again to begin the part of torquing your body from the ground up to throw the football. If your feet aren't set, if your feet aren't quick enough to get reset the way you want them, but you're having to get rid of the ball because you have a 270-pound defensive end on top of you, it can result in some bad stuff. So seeing his footwork kind of feed up to his pass, kind of speed, I think that's an encouraging sign.
All right, let's go ahead and transition over to the defense. And let's start with the players that weren't practicing, just to get it out there. Oso Odigizua not practicing. Carlos Watkins, obviously no Damone Clark, no Jabril Cox. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, but that's the majority of players here that didn't practice. We did see Kelvin Joseph practice. He's been a full participant all offseason long, so that's obviously good to see. What were some of your biggest takeaways from OTAs?
Well, let's start with the trio of defensive tackles, right? Because I think, yes, Osa didn't practice, but we did hear some more whispers again, or at least I heard some more whispers that the team is extremely excited about Osa, that he's he's lost and put on good weight, and he's gotten even more kind of muscle mass, which, I mean, he was already kind of, I thought, like lean and for a defensive tackle. So to see him kind of continue to go that route is exciting. There are lots of people inside the building are excited about what he's going to do. I think one of the other names that we heard a little bit about, specifically from Broadus and some of the other 105.3 guys that were at practice, was Tristan Hill.
I'm not doing it. I'm not getting sucked back in.
I know.
I just can't.
That's fine. That's totally fair. Tristan apparently has kind of reshaped his body a little bit, looks a little bit thinner, was consistently, they said, the first guy off the line of scrimmage when they're coming off the ball. So that's exciting to hear. We'll see if that actually translates to anything. And then Neville Gallimore was kind of a dubious claim that he put on 16 pounds of muscle while still maintaining his speed and kind of athleticism. I believe that he may have put on 16 pounds. I believe that it may be mostly 16 pounds of good weight and that he's in better athletic shape than he was before. I have a hard time believing that it's 16 pounds of pure muscle.
It's the end of the season.
Yeah, that seems especially for a guy that is still kind of dealing with an elbow situation. I think that seems like a lot.
So he came into the NFL at 304 pounds. You're telling me he weighs 320 pounds and still runs a 4.79 40-yard dash?
Oh, I doubt that, because he played last year at 315, right? Like he was at
we're at 330. We're getting to Jordan Davis territory.
Yeah,
here, right?
like that's why I'm a little bit surprised, is because to me, he had bulked up a little bit last year. So I mean, my math is maybe all messed up, but 16 more pounds than where he was last year, by my calculations, has got to put him close to 330, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
there's no way. My guess is he's probably 320, right?
And then it's just kind of redistributed, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Either way, like, I'm excited if he felt like the work that he's put in is enough that he could say that he put on 16 pounds of muscle, I'm excited about whatever the result is, whether that 16-pound number is true or not.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there's something to the idea that he has gotten more powerful. And if that's the case, then maybe what you're going to see is more lineups of Gallimore as the nose and Osa as a 3, and kind of maybe them flopping back and forth in those roles. So
I agree.
I am excited to see exactly what we're getting out of the defensive tackle group this year.
And we should also mention another name with the defensive tackles from yesterday, Chauncey Golston. Now, I should preface this by saying the Cowboys almost exclusively worked in passing situations and third down stuff yesterday. But according to somebody that was there, Golston took every single rep inside. And I guess the plan is, and this makes total sense to me, he's going to be used as a base defensive end on first, second down, and then kick inside on obvious passing situations. Again, because you have DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, who we'll get to, Sam Williams, Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong. But this is kind of what we've always, pictured with Chauncey Golston. He's a inside power rusher that's a little bit undersized to do that, but I think with his quickness and power, I think he could be really successful. So if those are your defensive tackles, kind of your pass rushers, Tristan Hill, Osa, Gallimore, and Golston, it's a lot of depth there at least.
Yeah, and Golson's got a great length. That's really where it's going to help him inside. Is he's kind of a longer player. He apparently he has put on some weight, good weight this offseason. He's bulked up a little bit. He spent that's not surprising. Just knowing what we know about Golson is that he spent all offseason in the weight room. I really did expect him to take a jump this year just because of his general attitude and his approach. He's kind of has that Osa level of kind of seriousness to him, right? He understands what he's doing and understands that this is an opportunity. So I am interested to see him there. I am also interested to see what Bohanna looks like. We heard that he's lost a little bit of weight, looks a little bit more in shape than he did last year. So that's another guy that's going to be inside that we'll get to see. I think Golson to me is a guy that, likely will mirror what Tank does. I think Tank will probably see some of that too, where he's outside, they'll kick him inside a little bit. Guys like that are really great when you're trying to run a lot of twists and stunts because they can move so quickly laterally, they can get around quickly and just cause a lot of confusion. And all that length inside is really good for kind of keeping guards off of you and being able to kind of quickly get past them. And when you're inside, you don't have to worry about sharpening that edge to come around the corner. And that's really where Golson, that's not the strength of his game. The strength of his game is using his length and getting around, and maybe he'll have more opportunity to take down a quarterback while he's doing that from the inside.
I feel like Golson's one of their biggest wild cards on their defense. Like we just don't really talk about him at all when we talk about the front seven, right? Because we're always talking about Lawrence and Parsons and what can Sam Williams do? And can Dante Fowler get back to what we saw a couple years ago? But if Golston makes a big leap in year 2 and all of a sudden he's a guy that you feel really good about giving 30, 40 snaps a game, your defensive line could be pretty good pretty quickly. So just kind of keep an eye on him throughout the summer, throughout the OTAs, mini camps, and as we get into training camps, because he could be a big difference maker for the Cowboys this season. All right, a couple other players. We should mention Marquis Bell, who it sounds like made the play of practice. He had a 98-yard interception return for a touchdown.
It sounds like he was out of bounds. Let's be honest. He stepped out of bounds.
He's somebody from the moment the Cowboys have signed him, has just got a ton of praise, right? We've heard Dan Quinn talk about him, heard the Cowboys maybe thinking about using him at multiple positions, but in the first practice that's open to the media, he makes a splash play like that. That's how UDFA makes the 53-man roster.
It's that time of year, guys. Let's say it with me. It's the drum beat. Right? What's the drum beat? This is the first practice. We start to listen for the drums, listen for when they start hearing who's the drum banging for. It's about consistency. It's about hearing it over and over again. This is a great start for Bell. This is exactly what you want when you're coming into the NFL as an undrafted free agent. You need to make plays. The key here is, and the key has always been, especially with these undrafted free agents, keep going. Just keep doing it. It's got to be every day. It's got to be every other day. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be week 1 of training camp, week 2 of training camp. It's got to be the preseason. It's got to be after the preseason. That's the thing that will, be the difference, especially for these undrafted folks. They just have to continue. It's not enough to be splashy. How many of these undrafted free agents have we seen that are splashy? They can't do it consistently enough to make the team. They spend the entire OTAs, they spend the entire training camp making the play of the day. Oh, this guy did this. Oh, this guy did this. It's usually wide receivers, right? It's usually these wide receivers that were like, there's no way this guy doesn't make the team. And then we get to the last 2 weeks of training camp and they don't do anything. It's just like they completely fall off a cliff. So all these undrafted free agents, it's about consistency. It's about the doing it week in and week out. And if they can, then they have a good chance to make the roster. I think for someone like Bell, if he doesn't quite live up to that level of consistency, I think at the very bare minimum, he's got a practice squad spot for him because of the money that he's already being paid as an undrafted free agent. But I think if he can kind of continually play like this, make a play here or there every day, every other day, there's a chance that he could potentially make the starting roster and be a down roster guy that not the starting roster, but make the 53-man roster and be a guy that contributes early in special teams while he's waiting for a position on defense.
He's one of the players I'm most excited to see once we get to training camp and preseason because I think he's going to be a lot of fun. He's just oozing with athleticism, and if he can start making those plays and becoming consistent, it's got a real chance to make the 53-man roster. All right, the last thing we need to talk about, it's the most overblown thing I've seen so far from practices. Micah Parsons was working with the linebackers for the majority of practice. Okay, great. He was also rushing the passer. Somebody asked him about what position he plays and how does he see much of Sam Williams, and Parsons said, I don't really play the same position as Sam Williams, so I don't see him a lot. I don't know why you guys care about this so much. Like, Dan Quinn knows how to use Micah Parsons. It's okay. I promise you he's going to rush the passer a lot this season.
I agree. Like, I think we need to stop with the Micah watch. Like, they will properly regulate which room which he's supposed to be in during meetings. They will properly regulate whether he needs to be with the pass rushers and when he needs to be the linebacker. It's a lot of criticism for a lot of folks that basically didn't have any faith in the first place that Micah Parsons could be a pass rusher when Dan Quinn and his team did. So I'm going to give them the benefit of a doubt here because they did a pretty good job with him last year. So I'm going to believe that they can do it again.
I mean, if you want the truth is he's a better pass rusher than he is a linebacker. So they're probably having him work on being a better linebacker, right? Like, so in the games where they need him to be a linebacker, not a true pass rusher, like we saw against the 49ers, probably trying to get him better at, working on his reads and his keys and all that kind of stuff. It's just not a big deal to me. Mike is going to be fine. Wherever they play him, he's going to be just fine.
They're going to be determining where he's sitting based on what they're learning in each one of these rooms every single day. Something that they have mapped out on schedules for probably the next several months. Do you have any of these schedules? I don't. So I'm going to trust that they have planned this out and they've done it in a way that makes sense to make sure that Micah's getting the benefits of learning both positions. I think we just need to kind of let this go and trust them that they know what they're doing with Micah, because I kind of feel like they've proven themselves capable here.
Anything else from OTAs? Because that's all I got for notes.
No, I mean, again, I think it's on a personal level, it's nice for there to be stuff, right? It's nice. It's nice it's nice to have information. It's nice to get, some data points of any type, where people are, whether athletically, the health stuff, not as concerning. Where they're playing is interesting, but again, I think we all get super excited about the first bits of information when it comes out, and we all react in ways that are probably overreacting.
Yes.
But I think that it's good to start kind of getting these data points, because I think for us, especially this year, we've had so many questions about what the Cowboys' plans are at certain positions or at certain things. And as these OTA practices go on, I think we'll get more and more answers, and it'll kind of help us understand what they're trying to do.
All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Follow Locked On every day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Same place you get the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. And we'll see you guys next time.